For 3 months now, people have been transfixed by the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, an environmental disaster that's having ripple effects as far afield as British Columbia and the coastal community of Kitimat. That's where oil from a proposed pipeline would be transferred to ocean tankers. Duncan McHugh spoke to people there who are warning this has the makings of another Gulf disaster.
The Douglas Channel. Years ago, Art Sterrett trolled these waters in a fishing boat.
There's black cod, there's halibut. Over on the beaches over there, there's mussels. There's other beaches where you can dig clams and cockles.
But now he's come back to wage war. He represents a group of coastal First Nations, and he's fresh from an eye-opening trip to Louisiana.
That's that little island right there. Yep. Coming back here after having been into the Gulf of Mexico, you just count your blessings.
After watching millions of liters of oil spew into the Gulf, Sterrett and other chiefs decided to pay a visit.
Everywhere you smell oil.
They saw cleanup crews on empty beaches. And heard sad tales from Cajun and Native peoples.
The concern for the Cajuns and the Native Americans in the Gulf is that their shrimp fishery is going to die. Those are the same things that we know will happen here.
The trip was, without doubt, calculated to bring attention to their own fight with big oil.
We need to get the people in this province to recognize the magnitude of the disaster that's being proposed for this coast.
A much different view comes from the headquarters of Enbridge Inc.
Northern Gateway is a tremendous opportunity for Canada. It links our world-class resource with the world's largest growing market.
John Carruthers is president of a pipeline dubbed the Northern Gateway, which he hopes to start building by 2013, and it's a massive plan. From the oil sands in Alberta, the pipeline would stretch over 1,000 kilometers, crossing hundreds of creeks and streams, carrying 500,000 barrels of crude every day to Kitimat. The oil would go into gigantic tankers, then be shipped out coastal channels to refineries in China.
It's time we came together to build the Northern Gateway Pipeline.
Naturally, a multi-billion-dollar project promising thousands of construction jobs and hundreds more permanent jobs is big news in the north. Especially in Kitimat, a town where aluminum is king, but things are looking bleak since the local pulp mill shut down. The pipeline has this shop of industrial contractors buzzing, and owner Mark Harnadak hopeful.
Our people need work, they want jobs, they want to know their families are going to have a future here in 10 years, 20 years. I think comparing the Gulf to the Channel is like comparing a plane crash to a car wreck. You know, they were drilling for oil in a somewhat exploratory way or a new technology. We're talking about running ships across the top of the ocean. They're not the same thing.
Of course, the Exxon Valdez disaster looms heavy over any talk of tankers in BC. More recently, the Queen of the North sank. In the same narrow channel oil tankers will travel. Last winter, not far from Kitimat, a freighter lost its steering and ran aground.
There's human error, there's equipment failures, there's also construction defects.
Dave Shannon is a retired Alcan engineer. After researching oil tanker construction, he concluded double-hull tankers aren't foolproof. Then he joined a group opposing them.
I'm not opposed to industry. I worked for Alcan for 32 years. But these are not the right jobs.
How come?
Because of the risks. Potential for a crude oil leak in these waters is really treacherous, really awful. I don't want that. I'm not in favor of jobs at any cost.
The movement of tankers arriving at the dock will
Still, Enbridge says each tanker will be escorted by 2 tugboats in case of mechanical failure, and it will invest in emergency response teams to act quickly should a spill happen.
We know it's remote, but it is possible. We go to a lot of efforts to ensure that there's equipment, process, and people available if there is ever an incident.
But it's not a question of if there is a spill, maintains Art Sterrett, just when.
There's lots here.
This is what's at stake, he says, an ancient village site where Gitga'at people have harvested cockles and shellfish for generations.
There's actually no reason to export this oil out of Canada. North America has a need for oil. They import oil from other places. I think our oceans are too sacred. It couldn't survive an oil spill. It would wipe it out.
As the tug of war escalates, the town of Kitimat is now officially sitting on the fence. Mayor Joanne Monahan pulled her qualified endorsement off an Enbridge website after her council urged a more neutral tone.
I think the jobs would be absolutely wonderful. We certainly need them. But I do not want to risk the environment if the environment assessment says that it's not going to be good for our community.
Out here, a pipeline isn't measured in miles.
Enbridge is selling its safety record, yet TV ads don't mention places like Wisconsin, where the company faced criticism for breaking numerous environmental laws during pipeline construction in 2007.
Every step of the way.
We did have some learnings from there where we had to mitigate some issues we had in terms of environmental violations. So we've actually addressed those in full, and we're moving to learn from that.
Meanwhile, Enbridge plows ahead with that environmental review expected to last 2 years.
I think the spill in the Gulf has very much impacted what we need to do. A recognition that that was a catastrophic event, and we need to ensure the public is confident that we can build and operate this pipeline project safely.
From there over to that bay, they intend to flatten that out and put the tank farm in here.
Starrett betting the environmental assessment is merely a rubber stamp is also appealing to the public.
Every precaution possible cannot guarantee that there won't be a spill. And every contingency plan for cleaning it up will not clean it up. The risks involved in this are far greater than any of the rewards that could ever come to British Columbians.
The disaster in the Gulf, thousands of kilometers away but ever present in the battle to win hearts and minds in northern British Columbia. Duncan McHugh, CBC News, Kitimat.
Ever since the explosion 3 months ago, you've heard about the impact on the Gulf Coast and the people who make their living there. But what about the very first people touched by this crisis? The 11 men who lost their lives on the Deepwater Horizon. One of them was 24-year-old Adam Wisey. CBC video journalist Marcia Conn